I've come to Bangladesh to meet the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina.
And so this is the centre of the community here in a way.
We've seen her devastation following the assassination of her family.
How could they kill him? How could they assassinate him?
She would go on to become a powerful but controversial leader.
This is not a nation that takes care of its own people.
And now she's fighting to win a third election.
If they vote for me, I am here. If they don't, I'm not here.
Thank you so much.
I've returned to Bangladesh for the first time in 41 years. I'm travelling around the country with the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina. She's showing me some of the places that mean most to her. Bangladesh is the 8th most populous nation in the world. 2/3 of the population, more than 100 million people, live in the countryside. 1,000 years ago, when it was part of northern India, Islam swept across the region. And today, 90% of Bangladeshis are Muslim. But there are Hindu temples alongside mosques in most villages. And everywhere there are rivers. They are the lifeblood of the country. Villagers whose lives and traditions have changed little over hundreds of years depend on them. Sheikh Hasina has a vision for the country, a golden Bangladesh, she calls it, following on from her father's vision. It's her life's mission.
A Bangladesh where every man, woman and child has the basic necessities of life, enough food, shelter, clothing, education, medical care. A Bangladesh where everyone is at peace. They don't have to be wealthy, but there is no poverty, there is no shortage. That's really the dream of a golden Bengal.
Today, dignitaries line up to meet her. But she wasn't always welcome.
Hello,
We welcome you on the soil of Tungepara,
Thank you very
the land
much.
of father of the nation.
Well, that is a great honour to be here.
In 1975, her father dead, her family murdered, and Bangladesh in meltdown. Sheikh Hasina was exiled in India.
And so begins a tumultuous era of coups, counter-coups and assassinations.
After 75, about 18 coups that took place in our country. So there was no democracy at all.
Sheikh Hasina was ready to fight for democracy in Bangladesh. And in 1981, she brought her family home.
They thought that nobody from this blood will come back and take, the initiative. But I came back here, took the challenge. My children were very young. It was very difficult to come back, and the then government tried to prevent me so that I shouldn't come back. But I decided to return, come back and to work for democracy.
When she first moved back to Bangladesh, it was a very scary place to be. I was a teenager, and we had no freedom. There was no democracy, and she fought.
But her fight for democracy was all too reminiscent of her father's.
During that time, she was arrested repeatedly. She was targeted for assassinations. She was shot at.
There had been 19 attempts on your life through all these years. I mean, how did you come to terms with that?
Well, you see, in 75, I lost my nearest, dearest one.
Yeah.
And so I don't have any fear about my life.
On the 21st of August 2004, a grenade attack.
They thought that if they can assassinate me, then perhaps they can stop this. They can stop my voice.
They almost succeeded. 22 of her supporters died and 500 were injured. It was carnage. She herself was badly hurt.
I know my father sacrificed his life, and I am ready to sacrifice because I have to fulfill my father's unfinished job.
My grandfather gave this country independence. He fought the military dictatorships and gave this country independence. I believe my mother gave this country democracy back.
That fight for democracy dominated the 1980s. Sheikh Hasina worked with her sworn enemy, Khalida Zia, the leader of the Bangladesh National Party. The hatred between them went right back to 1975. Zia's husband had founded the BNP and had taken over power after Mujib's assassination. It had started what was in effect a blood feud.
So this type of deep hatred, mistrust dominates the Bangladesh politics. It's not like traditional political rivalry. It's deep mistrust, deep hatred.
The collaboration between the two women bore fruit. In 1991, democracy prevailed. But it was Khalida Zia who became Prime Minister, leaving Sheikh Hasina furious.
Election was manipulated many times. The result was change, and so many anomalies I found in the election process.
The feud between the two women reignited, and it has dominated Bangladeshi politics ever since.
These personal issues, family issues, those issues have generated so much hatred between these two ladies, between these two leaders, and they always want to equate these issues with idealistic issues.
Could you ever work with her seriously again, or is the rift just too wide?
We have ideological difference.
Yeah.
Because our party was established to ensure people's right. Every election, each and every election was free and fair. That way we conducted it because we believe in democracy. But in other hand, if you go through the history of BNP, during their time, local election or any by-election, every time there was killing, conspiracy, manipulation, so many incidents took place. So there is a basic difference.
This was the first meeting between the two ladies in 15 years, an indication, say optimists, that it may be the start of a new era in Bangladesh politics, though not everyone agrees.
I think the biggest difference between the two parties is the difference between the two ladies who head the two different parties. We have always had a dysfunctional parliament in Bangladesh since 71. We have ended up having one single party sitting in the parliament, the opposition never going to the parliament, and two leaders at the top who don't communicate with each other.
If the two of you run into each other, say in the room down the corridor or somewhere, you would speak to each other normally?
Of course we do.
Yeah.
Of course we do. You know, when my father was president, Ziaur Rahman was an army officer. He used to visit our house very often with his wife. In many occasions, social occasions, we met, we exchanged pleasantry. So that is not the point. It is absolutely ideological. It is how you run.
Ideologically, yes.
Of course it is ideological.
They may have ideological differences, but perhaps there's one thing both women would agree on.
I think men are very jealous. Yes, men are very jealous.
They're jealous of
jealousy,
jealous of women getting into power.
That's true. That's true, because they cannot come to power. That's why they are jealous. What I think, this is my feeling.
In 1996, 21 years after her father's assassination, Sheikh Hasina's dream came true.
Well, after 21 years, we formed government.
জনগণের ভোটের অধিকার প্রতিষ্ঠিত হয়েছে, সেজন্যই আমি আনন্দিত। সেই সঙ্গে সঙ্গে আমার মনে পড়ছে এই ভোটের অধিকার আদায়ের জন্য যারা আত্মাহুতি দিয়েছে সেই সব শহীদদের কথা।
But as in her father's time, the real challenges would still lie ahead. Corruption was rife then, and today Bangladesh is still among the most corrupt nations on earth.
How is the battle against corruption going? One always reads about corruption in Bangladesh and so on. Is there more or less today than there was 10 years ago?
Of course it is less. You know, if you see that wherever military dictator rule the country, they patronize corruption. I feel that if there is corruption, you cannot develop a country.
The people who make Bangladesh are the farmers in the field, the garment workers, the migrant workers. People like us, middle-class people, live off them. Yet we do very little for them. This is not a nation that takes care of its own people. It's a question of who can utilize that term to get benefits for himself or herself.
What does a leader have to do to stop corruption?
Well, you have to send a message to the nation, to the people and those who are involved in activities. If they can sense, if they can feel that yes, from head of the government we are not getting any indulgence or any facilities, then automatically it reduced.
Today, we have essentially major right-wing political parties taking turns between themselves to run, or not run, to loot a country one after another.
Sheikh Hasina is also accused by some of political manipulation. 3 years ago, she instigated trials against alleged Bangladeshi collaborators in the 1971 War of Independence, trials which have divided the country.
What was your motivation in terms of the war crimes trials?
In 1971, as you know, that there was a genocide committed by the then occupied army, Pakistani army, and some of our people here, they collaborated them. They themselves killed many of our people.
For Sheikh Hasina, it's very personal. Her grandparents' house in Tungapara was attacked in 1971 by Pakistani soldiers assisted by local collaborators.
They attacked this house and they burned it. My grandparents were alive. They just took them outside the house. They were sitting in front of them. They burned the house.
With the passage of time, have you forgiven them?
They killed our people, they raped our women, they tortured, and especially those who were Bengali. They are war criminals, so they should get punished.
But opponents claim these are flawed political show trials.
You cannot disassociate war crime trial issue from politics. It's not possible. But the question is how fair the trial process is. That is much more important. And you would find people in Bangladesh who would raise many questions about the degree of fairness at the trial process.
I don't understand why these people are opposing it.
A number of death sentences have been handed out by the courts. All are senior politicians from parties opposed to Sheikh Hasina.
There are 10 opposition figures on trial, including the entire leadership of Jamaat-e-Islami and 2 from the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Jamaat-e-Islami has enforced a nationwide strike in protest at the verdicts. The opposition claim this latest sentencing shows again how the Prime Minister is clearing away those who threaten to unseat her in the elections scheduled for later this year.
Sometimes you can hear the hue and cry from many quarter that you are taking revenge against opposition and this and that. It is not true. Law will take its own course. Those who lost their family members, it is their demand that these criminals should be punished. So it was our commitment to the people. If you don't try these criminals, then you cannot move forward, because it is just like a curse to the nation.
And what of the climate? Is that a curse? The country is a vast delta, a floodplain, fed by huge rivers from the Himalayas. Rivers are essential to the rural economy, and flooding is the norm. But cyclones bring devastation, and global warming threatens millions. This was 1998. A series of cyclones left more than 3/4 of Bangladesh underwater.
That was the worst flood we ever faced in this country. The whole country, about 70% area, was underwater for almost 68 days. There was a prediction that 20 million people may die, but we took all steps to save our people. We prepare food, we send them food, we send them water. We have worked very hard. But because of the geographical situation of Bangladesh, we always face these natural calamities.
What can you do as a human being with Mother Nature?
The climate change, actually Bangladesh is not responsible for.
As the rest of the world dithers and argues about climate change, Bangladesh is on the receiving end. This is a country where 80% of the land is less than 10 meters above sea level. So rising sea levels are a real threat.
Many developed countries, they are causing this problem, and we are suffering. So they have also their responsibility how to mitigate this emission, how to, save people. From Bangladesh side, already we have taken some steps. We started, a plantation, the tree, the green belt in the coastal area and also other area. But I think international community, they have their responsibility. They should come forward with more assistance so that we can implement all our, adapted plans, program to save our people from these natural calamities. That is very, very important.
Very important.
In spite of these calamities, some predict a prosperous future for Bangladesh. It has a huge and very cheap workforce. Its garment industry is now worth $30 billion a year. But many of the factories are dangerous sweatshops, and the consequences can be fatal.
This is all that's left of an 8-story building in the outskirts of Dhaka. Authorities say the building did not meet safety standards, yet inside were factories making clothes for global retail brands.
My son's name is Mehdi. Please, I beg of you, bring him back to me. If they can't find him, I'll die.
Bangladesh is the world's second largest garment producer.
The owner of the building forced all the workers to go to work. This is how he killed all the workers. I want him hanged. I want him hanged.
Very sad story what happened. Yes. It is not, we cannot accept it, because previous day it was identified that there is some crack in the building, and our law enforcement agencies and the local administration, they asked all the workers to come out from the building, and they stopped that you shouldn't go there. So next day they engaged that one from our engineering university. They will go, they will see the condition of the building, and then they will decide. Unfortunate thing happened that some of the owners and their representatives, administrative officers, they forced these garments workers to enter the building, and then it was collapsed. These poor people, they have come from village to make their fortune. Unfortunately, they lost their life.
There's a stench of dead bodies here, and rescuers have called off their search for survivors.
Many of Bangladesh's garment factories are owned by the country's MPs and wealthy supporters of Sheikh Hasina. Could she or others have done more?
Who do you blame for this? The people who run the factories, or perhaps the customers in Britain or America? Should they have insisted on better conditions for the workers here?
I feel that the responsibility lies with everybody.
Everybody?
Everybody. Because the buyer, if they can increase the price of the garment, then they can establish proper building. I feel it is an wake-up call for everybody. Now the owner of the factory or the buyer or everybody, now they will be cautious in the future.
The immediate future for Bangladesh is a general election. In the volatile politics here, only one thing is certain. Tempers will fray, protesters will take to the streets, and quite possibly worse. This was 8 years ago, in the lead up to the election, a black day.
Can you imagine that one day, it was 2005, 17th August, one day within half an hour, all over Bangladesh, our 63 districts, 500 bomb blasted. In Dhaka city, about 35 places bomb blasted. Yes. That was our situation.
An extremist group demanding an Islamic government used the tactics of terror.
In the past 10 years or so, we've seen a lot of violence committed, especially by the fundamentalists. That is the one thing that probably worries her the most. The loss of life, this violence.
But after more than 2 decades of the same two parties and the same two leaders, even moderate voices are now calling for political change.
There is definite demand for new political leadership or third political forces. But the supply line is weak. The problem lies there. But demand is definitely there in the society.
Prime Minister, there's a general election coming at the end of this year, beginning of next year. I'm assuming that, of course, you will run again in that election and expect to win again.
It totally depends on people. I am serving them, they elected me, so I am here as a Prime Minister. Next election will be absolutely free here. If people are satisfied, if they voted for me, I will come. If they vote for me, I am here. If they don't, I am not here. But I want to establish that their voting right, their constitutional right must be established, and they get all chance to vote freely and fairly and choose their own government.
I've really enjoyed this second visit to Bangladesh, and I think I better not wait 41 years. For my next one, I might not be at my best then, perhaps. But thank you so much. It's been a joy and a delight to be here.
I'm really happy that after 42 years, you are again in Bangladesh and again in the same house.
Yes, we look forward to the next installment. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.